Hey guys, let's talk about our sentence length. So remember, you don't want to just switch up your sentence type, which is like simple, compound, complex, but also the length of your sentences. If you have a good sentence type variety, so you have lots of different simple, compound, and complex sentences, but all your sentences are the same length, your writing will probably still sound repetitive, even though you have some good variety with your actual sentence type. Okay, so let's talk about some basic ways to switch up the length of our sentences. So if you tend to have a lot of really short sentences, okay, a couple of things you can do are one, you can combine closely related short sentences using subordinating conjunctions like our alubis words, okay? So for example, porcupine fish are usually left alone by predators, period. Their bodies are covered with sharp spines, period. You can take this and instead say, porcupine fish are usually left alone by predators because their bodies are covered with sharp spines. All right, another option is to add information using dashes or commas. So for example, Mr. Nelson took me fishing could go to Mr. Nelson, my kind elderly neighbor took me fishing. So we've added in some information and expanded our sentence. Or you could add introductory phrases to shorter sentences. So for example, we caught 5 bass could be in less than an hour, we caught 5 bass. Okay, so again, just expanding those shorter sentences, switching it up a little bit. Now, you can also break up longer rambling sentences into shorter sentences by replacing ands with periods, which we talked about last week. Okay, so I want to talk for a minute about what the effects of different sentence lengths are. So why, yes, it makes it sound less repetitive, but does it do something in particular to have short sentences versus long sentences? Like, what does that do? Okay, so a couple things shorter sentences can do. One, if you have a whole bunch of long sentences and then you put a short sentence, it makes that sentence stand out. So if you have something that you want to really stand out, making it be like the one short sentence is really good to emphasize it. So let's look at this example. The bride, left alone with her father in the reception hall of the church while the march of the maidens went on and on. She had walked along the tables laden with gourmet goodies and absent-mindedly sampled first the little pink and yellow and green mints. Then she picked through the silver bowls of mixed nuts and ate the pecans, followed by a cheese ball or two, some black olives, a handful of glazed almonds, a little sausage with a frilly toothpick stuck in it, a couple of shrimps blanketed in bacon, and a cracker piled with liver pate. To wash all of this down, her father gave her a glass of pink champagne to calm her nerves. What you noticed as the bride stood in the doorway was not her dress, but her face, white. For what was coming down the aisle was a living grenade with the pin pulled out. The bride threw up. All right, so we have all these long sentences. And at the end, the bride threw up. All right, and notice also when he described her face, white, that was just that one word by itself, also really stood out, okay? So really emphasizing that the bride has just vomited on everyone here. All right, now shorter sentences can also make a slower pace in our writing, which is why we don't always want to have a bunch of really short sentences because it kind of slows down the pace at which the reader can read. Because having a period at the end of each thought is kind of like repeatedly hitting the brakes on a car. Okay, but if you want the reader to really slow down, okay, short sentences can be helpful. So if you're at a moment in your story where stuff is kind of slowing down, you want the reader to focus on each thing and kind of build up tension, using a lot of short sentences can do that well. So the juggernaut of fate rolled down the road. This is from the same story where the bride throws up, but this is before that happens. The juggernaut of fate rolled down the road and the final hour came. Guests in formal attire packed the church. Enough candles were lit to bring daylight back to the evening. In the choir loft, the orchestra pushed great music. The mighty mother of the bride coasted down the aisle. She took her seat with the satisfaction of an opera diva at a premiere performance. She had done it. She glowed, beamed, smiled, and sighed. All right, so lots of short sentences. And again, the author is coming up to this. The bride is going to come down and throw up on her mother, in fact. And so we're slowing down the pace. All right. Now, let's talk about what long sentences can do. So longer sentences make a faster pace because you're not stopping to have those periods and pauses, okay? So when you're describing fast-paced action, all right, longer sentences mimic the pace of longer sentences mimic the pace of real life events, okay? So, for example, this is from right after the bride throws up. Groomsmen rushed about heroically. Many princess flower girls squalled. Bridesmaids sobbed, and people with weak, that's supposed to say stomachs, headed for the exits. All right, so all these actions, we don't want a bunch of pauses because all these actions are happening at once, okay? So putting them all in one sentence is helpful. Now, longer sentences can also build suspense as we wait and wait and wait and wait for the end to come. You'll see them a lot in scary stories, like when the main character is walking down the hall, you'll see these long sentences. So here's another one from, again, before the bride is getting ready to come out. Finally, oh so finally, the wedding march thundered from the orchestra with Here Comes the Bride, as four enthusiastic mini princesses arrived chunking flower petals, followed by two dwarfish ring bearers, one for each ring, and the congregation rose and turned in anticipation. All right, so again, we're building suspense up to this moment. We don't know it yet, but the bride's about to throw up. So we're building that suspense, so that longer sentence helps us with that. All right, so hopefully you have some idea now of why people use long sentences versus short sentences, but the main thing you need to know is that you should be varying these sentences in your writing, okay? So we'll do some practice with this tomorrow. We'll look at some authors who do a really good job varying their sentence lengths and why, and hopefully you'll kind of get this all straight in your head.